This is John Henry Weston of LifeSite News coming at you from the Vatican. Very privileged to be in the presence of and the apartment of Cardinal Arinze, retired head of the Vatican Curia. Which department?
Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments.
Absolutely, and that is a specialization in the sacraments of the Church, including Holy Communion, confession, and so on?
Definitely, because the Holy Eucharist is the greatest sacrament, of course.
Beautiful, beautiful. We're very privileged to have you with us at LifeSite News. There are those who have called Holy Communion to be given to couples who are in canonically valid marriages and have expressed the advice to refrain from sexual acts in the new relationship not only appears unrealistic to many, it is also questionable whether sexual actions can be judged independent of the lived context. How would you react to that?
How I would react is this. The Ten Commandments are given us by God. Have we any authority to say that it is unrealistic to expect people to keep any of the Ten Commandments? Not only number 6 and number 9, also number 5, abortion, killing of innocent people, number 7, stealing, whether small sums of money or big. We cannot go on the reasoning that it is unrealistic. You can say it is not easy. I accept. Christ never promised us that it is easy to follow him. He said, those who want to be his disciples, take up your cross daily and follow me. Well, if people are not prepared to do that, then they are declaring that keeping God's law, we cannot expect people to do that. Then it isn't only divorce, remarried. You might as well ask the man who is working in the office and his secretary is a lady. Then you might as well argue, is it unreasonable to expect two of them to be chaste? Is it unreasonable to expect people to be honest when they see a chance to take government money or to take another person's property? Is that unreasonable to expect that? Christ himself tells us, those who confess me before people, I will confess them before my Father. But if you do not confess me before people, before my Father, I will deny you. Which means it can be tremendous on that day. Not I creating this situation, but Christ himself. He speaks of some who are not ready to follow him. 10 girls, 5 wise took oil in their lamps, the 5 stupid, no oil. So they were not there. The place was closed. They came later. They were told, out you go. You are not coming. So it shows us that our personal decisions can influence our future. It means, therefore, we should help people with the truth in all charity, but without hiding anything. If you say, we cannot expect people to be chaste in that situation, to refrain from sexual relations, then you are challenging the fundamental teaching that sexual relations are correct only between husband and wife in a proper marriage. That between any other two people is wrong. Whether they are heterosexual or homosexual, it is wrong because it is against the order established by God, the Creator. It isn't church law, really. If it were church law, it would be like, don't eat meat on Friday, or you are to fast on Ash Wednesday. If you are sick, you are dispensed. If you are in an aeroplane, you are flying, there's no other food, you are allowed to eat meat, because it is church law. But divine law, you cannot name a situation which Christ did not foresee. Nor can you tell us that you are wiser than Christ, that you have modified what he said, we will then ask you, who do you think you are? Greater than Christ? He is the way, the truth, and the life. Idea that receiving Holy Communion doesn't solve everything. If a person is in state of grace and receives communion, he gets no grace. If a person is in state of sin and receives Holy Communion, he gets no grace. So it isn't just struggling. In Africa, for instance, we have polygamists who have taken a second wife, third, fourth. They don't try to receive Holy Communion because they know from the catechism that even if they did receive, they would get no grace.
It's not a great act of mercy then.
No, the act of mercy is to help them with the truth.
We have, the church has always held that for a person to leave their spouse and enter a civil union with another is adultery. Does the church actually have, or does even the Pope have the power to change that?
Not to change the doctrine, but if the person thinks the first marriage was not valid, the person should go to the office of his diocese or her diocese. The canon law experts will examine it under the direction of the bishop. Pope Francis has, in September this year, revised the process, canonical process, to make it quicker and also less expensive. So that if the first marriage was not actually valid, for example, if the woman did not really want to marry that man, but was afraid and was compelled, it can be proved. In that case, that marriage is declared null and void from the word go, the first marriage. Then they will be free to marry another person. Short of that, they could not. Short of that, they are technically in a state of sin. Even if their conscience excuses them that the first marriage partner was a very difficult person, that the marriage was dead, that they can't make it, the other one promised to kill the other one, all that may be true, but it doesn't invalidate the marriage. So the way we can help the person is with the truth. If necessary, go to ecclesiastical court if you challenge the validity of the first marriage.
What about if the second marriage that is engaged in, or the civil marriage, if you want, is long established and they have children and things seem happy for them? Does that sort of assist in making that first marriage not valid?
Those can be true arguments, but they are not strong enough to render the real first marriage invalid. They are only saying that the man or woman is now in a happy liaison, but they don't prove that the first marriage was invalid or no. A canon law expert will look for another reason which affects the first marriage, not whether the person is now happier.
Is there such a thing as the state of mortal sin? We used to hear about a lot of that in the Catholic Church years ago, not heard about much today. And if so, can that person still receive Holy Communion?
There is such a thing as a state of mortal sin. Mortal sin is a total turning away from God. It's a terrible thing. It can be with reference to any of the commandments, not only the 6th and the 9th, the 5th. If a person kills and is ready to kill more people. If a person abortion and is ready to commit abortion, if necessary, again. If a person votes for abortion and will vote for abortion every time and has no intention of changing, then it is a state of mortal sin. In that case, then, the person disqualifies himself or herself from receiving Holy Communion because the person is in state of mortal sin. The simple catechism says the first condition for receiving Holy Communion fruitfully is to be in state of grace. If the person is in state of mortal sin and receives Holy Communion, the person indeed receives Christ, but no grace. That's the case where St. Paul said, let a person examine himself. He who receives unworthily receives judgment against himself. That's St. Paul. That is very severe. So it isn't actually whether the person received communion that will tell whether the person received grace. Suppose the person kills, this is a murderer who engages in robbery and is ready to kill people anytime, has already killed and is ready to kill more and is planning to kill more. If that person receives Holy Communion, even 5 times a day, no grace. Not only no grace, but the person commits sacrilege on top of the sins the person had before.
Could the argument not be made that receiving Jesus in Holy Communion, though, would help him to come out of his sin?
Yeah, but to come out of the sin, the sacrament needed is penance, the one we popularly call confession. You go to the priest, you accept you did evil, you say it is true your fault, and you have determined with God's grace to change. Then you get God's forgiveness. That helps. But if a person is in mortal sin and has no intention of leaving that action, then receiving Holy Communion does not help that person to become better, because it is one sacrilege on top of the sins the person had before. But there are some minor faults we call venial sin. And if like little bits of anger, little bits of lack of charity, receiving Holy Communion can help the person to come out of those. But those venial sins do not take away the life of God in the soul. So the person is still in state of grace. You can see that this teaching respects conscience and respects honesty. Our religion is not a matter of pretense, how we appear to other people or what people think of us. Only God, what God thinks of us, is the important question. That is why we don't judge another person. All we have said now is about objective right and wrong. Whether this person is subjectively well-informed, only God can judge. Whether this person's conscience is correct conscience or erroneous conscience or conscience culpably by the person's fault erroneous, or by the person's blunder and sins in the past erroneous, only God will judge that. Not even half a dozen cardinals will judge that. God doesn't need our help to judge that. So you can see it's all about honesty and openness before God, not what people think of us.
Absolutely. And I have one final question for Your Eminence. We have experienced in the United States, our justices basically said that it is now unconstitutional not to allow for same-sex marriage. And the basic question then is this proper? Is marriage a human invention?
Marriage is not a human invention. God created Adam, and God said it's not good for man to be alone. He created Eve. So the first man and woman were created by God, which means marriage comes from the creating hands of God. It isn't the Pope who made it. It isn't the United Nations. It isn't the parliament of any nation, no matter how powerful, which means that nobody has the right or even the power to reinvent marriage. It is not for me to comment on the laws of United States of America. I'm only speaking of human nature worldwide. If two people associate, maybe they are two lawyers, they set up legal chambers and they are lawyers. Or they are two doctors, they set up a clinic. The church can't oppose that. But if they begin calling their association marriage, we ask, you are not serious?
Cardinal Rense, thank you so very much for being with us on LifeSite News. God bless you.
Thank you.